In this video, I will show you simple but powerful Photoshop compositing techniques. I'm also excited to announce that I'll be one of this year's MSI Creator Awards 2024 judges. MSI, the world's leading PC brand, is hosting a global competition that's all about the fusion of art and technology. The competition is divided into 3 categories: animation, graphics, and film. The winner of each category will receive fabulous prizes, including cash and an MSI laptop. The deadline is August 11, 2024. Check out the link below for all the details and to submit your work. If you're feeling stuck, don't worry. Follow along with this helpful tutorial to inspire you. My name is Jesus Ramirez. Let's get started with this compositing tutorial. This is the image that we're going to work with. We have 5 layers, including a background, a paint splatter effect, a brush, a motherboard, and some cool looking tech lines. Our main subject will be this brush, and this is what we'll work with first. By the way, this is an Adobe stock image that did not have a background. If you're working on an image that has a background, you can use the remove background feature found here in the taskbar to remove the background. And if you have a more complex object or need to learn how to remove backgrounds from photos, then check out my video on how to do that. The link is below in the description. So we're gonna start with this, and the first step is to press Ctrl T on Windows, that's Command T on the Mac, to transform. That's going to change the taskbar and give you these different options. And the option that we want is this one right here, to flip the image vertically. And the reason we want to do that is that the shadows are on top. You want to make sure that the image's lighting matches your scene. And in this scene, the shadows shouldn't be on top, they should be at the bottom. So I can click on here so that we can get the bright areas on top and the shadows on the bottom. The next step is to set up the rule of thirds grid. You probably have seen that grid when you make a crop on your image. Is this checkerboard pattern that you see here. And this is an oversimplification, but it simply means that generally speaking, when you place objects on the outer edges, things look a little more interesting, and usually you want to have the most interesting parts of your image on one of these intersections here, one of these 4, to make the image more interesting. Of course, you can break the rules if you want, but again, generally speaking, images tend to look best when they're off balance like this. And obviously you cannot work with the crop tool, so I'm going to use guides to create that grid. To do so, you can press Ctrl R on Windows, Command R on the Mac, and you can click and drag guides from the rulers. But obviously this will take a long time and it will be very difficult to be accurate. So what can we do to make these guides automatically? Well, Photoshop has a feature for that. If you go into View, Guides, and choose New Guide Layout, you'll be able to create that from here. All you need to do is simply set 3 columns with no gutter, 3 rows with no gutter, and you'll have the rule of thirds grid created by guides. And so that you don't have to create this every single time, you can actually save a preset. Simply click on this drop down, choose Save Preset, and give it a name, Rule of Thirds, and click on Save. Press OK. And now, next time that you go in here, if you go into View, Guides, New Guide Layout, you'll see the Rule of Thirds option there, and you can use that anytime that you want. And what you want to do is place the brush, like the main part of your image, in one of these quadrants where they intersect, like right in that corner. And that's what I'm going to do right here. This is where I want all the action to happen in my scene. And I'm also going to click and drag the reference point over here. You can press Ctrl T on Windows, Command T on the Mac to transform, and make sure you enable the reference point from this checkbox, and then drag it over to this section right here. You don't have to be precise, anywhere along that intersection works. And now you can rotate from that angle, and by holding Alt on Windows or Option on the Mac, you can scale from that reference point. So I'm just going to scale from that reference point and put that right about there, and this looks fantastic. Now below that brush, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to create a shadow. And I'm just going to use the elliptical marquee tool and just make a shadow directly below that. It doesn't have to be perfect, just a selection like this. You can fill it with black by pressing Alt and Backspace. And the reason that I fill with black is because black is my foreground color. Alt Backspace or Option Delete on the Mac will fill with black. Then you can go into Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and blur that shadow a bit to get a better result. Control T to transform once again, and maybe I can move this over to the left here and scale out once again, maybe make it a little bit skinnier, whatever you want, whatever you think looks good for your design. And the reason I moved it to the left was that I wanted the darker shadow to be closer to the brush and then to start kind of disappearing at the end like so. So that means that I'm going to need to create a layer mask on the shadow layer and paint with black to hide. When you paint with black on the layer mask, you hide. And when you paint with white, you reveal. You can adjust your brush size by clicking on this drop down and increasing the brush size, or by tapping on the left and right bracket keys to increase or decrease the brush size. So I'm going to make a large brush and just paint that away like so, and maybe continue dragging it more to the left just to get something that works. If the brush is too big and it creates too much of a soft edge there, you can reduce the brush size and then create something sharper like so. And I'm just trying to create a brush that matches my scene here. So something that looks like this should work, and I can continue fine-tuning the edge details. And I think this looks pretty good. I'm still not 100% happy with my shadow, and what I can do at this point is select the layer here and go into Filter, Blur, Motion Blur, and then just increase the motion blur to increase the length of the shadow like so. And I'm going to have to do the same thing again. Move it to the left a little bit and then just paint away in these other areas. I made it longer, but I also made it longer on both sides. And I think this looks better. And this is going to work fantastic. Now it's time to work on the paint splatter here on the top right. So I'm going to enable the paint splatter. But before we even move it, why don't we blend this paint splatter layer to everything below? We can of course create a layer mask, but that will be too difficult to blend it with the background. Instead, let's just use simple Photoshop math. And that math is called blending modes, which are found under this dropdown. And you can see the line here and the line here. This creates the darken group. And with the darken group, you hide white. You make white invisible. So you can either choose darken or multiply in this case. The difference is that multiply blends the pixels of this layer with the layer below, and multiply doesn't blend anything. It either keeps a pixel from the layer below or the layer on top, whichever one is darkest. In this case, either will work, but will give you different effects. I'm going to choose multiply because I want to blend it with the background a little bit. There's a faint texture that you can kind of see, and maybe it'll pass over through the paint and that'll just create something that's more realistic. So that's what I'll choose. Then I'll press Control T to transform, flip it horizontally, and rotate it like so, so that it matches the angle that I'm looking for, and then maybe place it right about there. This looks pretty good. Maybe rotate it just slightly, and I'm not happy with that, so I'll go back where I was, maybe even further, and I'm just trying to find a spot that works. This might be a little too big, so I'm going to hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and click and drag to scale from the center, which is where the reference point is, and then I can continue making more adjustments so that this works the way that I want. So maybe something like this. I want to create the illusion that the brush is painting all those wonderful colors. What I'm going to do now is duplicate this layer by pressing Control J on Windows, that's Command J on the Mac, and I'm going to drag it above the brush layer. You can also move layers by holding Control on Windows, Command on the Mac, and tapping on the bracket keys. That's what I prefer to do. The bracket keys are to the right of the letter P in North American keyboards, and I'm just going to place this copy above the brush layer, and I'm going to press Control Alt G, Command Option G on the Mac to create a clipping mask. A clipping mask will make it so that this layer only affects the brush, and that's really what I want. So I can just place all these wonderful colors right over the brush here and maybe change the blending mode to darken, maybe even soft light or overlay. In this case, why don't we stick with darken and we can just move it around till we find something that works, maybe something like this. And before we move any further, I'm noticing that there's a slight faint line here, and that is because the paint splatter layer is not completely white. So let's make it completely white. If you go into Image, Adjustment, Levels, you can drag this slider here to the left and you'll make the pixels that are almost white completely white. You see the difference is very subtle. I don't know if you can see that here. See that line? The background is not completely white, but by dragging this slider, you'll make the background completely white and it will disappear completely. And that's what we want. I'll press OK, and that's the result. Now let's balance this image by adding some text lines opposite to the paint to help create a stronger association between art and technology. So these are our text lines. And again, I'll use the same blending mode, multiply, which will hide white and keep the other colors. But we have the same issue. See how these colors were off white? So they remain. See that? See how it's not really completely invisible? So we need to make the background completely white. Once again, if you go into Image, Adjustment, Levels, you can drag the white point to the left to make the pixels that are almost white completely white. And this is what the information on this histogram indicates, that there's a lot of pixels that are just off white. Notice the gradient here on the bottom. Anything to the far right is completely white. But we have these pixels right here, see that? Right here, that are not white, almost white. So if you want to make them completely white, drag this slider over to the left. So now any pixel that is this shade of gray or brighter will be completely white, which will make it invisible in the multiply blending mode, and everything looks fantastic. So now I'm going to press OK here as I'm scaling this down, and I'm going to rotate it and drag it into position. This looks pretty good. And I just want to make sure that I get something that works. And it looks good to my eye. And this is it. I'm going to click on done. And that looks pretty good. The issue now is that this design needs to be below the brush. So we'll use that keyboard shortcut we talked about a moment ago. Hold Control and tap on the left bracket key to move the layer down the layer stack. So just wait until you just go down the layer stack below the paint splatter effect. And there it is. And it looks fantastic. We have the tech design. We have the paint splatter, the brush. Everything is looking great. The only thing we need to work on now is placing this image over the brush to signify that we are using technology to create art. You can, of course, make this smaller and try to place it into position. Of course, we're going to need to create a layer mask to make this work. But before we even create a layer mask, I'm going to press Ctrl-Alt-G to create a clipping mask to make sure that the motherboard is only showing over the brush. So I just need to place it right about here. And again, rotate it if need be so that it looks good in my design. What I'm going to do now is select this layer and hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and click on the layer mask icon to hide everything. And I'm going to zoom in and I'm just going to paint with white wherever I want to reveal that image. I can tap on the left bracket key to reduce my brush size so that I can be more precise. And I can work on these edges like so. And I'm going to go quickly here. This won't be perfect, but I think you'll get the idea. So I can just paint on these areas. And I think this is where I'm going to end the motherboard. And notice that I went over the line here. You can tap on the X key to make black your foreground color. And when you paint with black on a layer mask, you hide those pixels. And this looks fantastic. The issue now is that if I need to reposition this motherboard, I will move the mask. So I don't want to move the mask. I only want to move the motherboard. To do that, just unlink the mask from the layer. Make sure that the focus, the white outline, is on the layer thumbnail and not on the layer mask. And then you can just move this around anywhere you want. And it looks like I miss a couple pixels here on the mask. So I can select it choose the brush tool, and paint the pixels back in, but it looks like I'm using black. I need white, so I'm going to tap on the X key to make white my foreground color, and then I can paint with white to bring the motherboard back, and everything looks great. Now we need some of those highlights and details on the motherboard, but in order to get those in place, we need to either use a blending mode, which I don't think will work that great in this case. These are the blending modes that I can choose. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this brush layer by pressing Ctrl J and then move the brush layer that is not clipped to the very, very top and then clip it, Ctrl Alt G. Now I can change the blending mode to something like overlay or soft light, and I can control the intensity by reducing the opacity, and that helps bring more detail into the motherboard. And the motherboard, since it's no longer attached to the mask, I can use the move tool and continue to reposition it accordingly. And I think this will look even better if we drag the motherboard below the paint splatter copy so that we can get some paint onto the motherboard itself. When I double click on the hand tool, you'll see the final result. By the way, guides do not print, so when you save this, you will not see the guides. But if you want to disable the guides as you're working, press the Control key and tap on the semicolon key, which is next to the letter L, to disable. To bring them back, do the same thing. Control on Windows, Command the Mac, and tap on the semicolon. And this is my final result. Remember to check out the link below for all the details and to submit your work.